Happy Wine Wednesday, everyone. I have my Seahorse glass. Holly has her, what is that?
I'm drinking Waterloo sparkling water. It's called Pinot Colada.
Ooh,
So it's
I love
pina
it.
colada without the alcohol. It's a flavored water, and it's really good. I just got these and
I
tasting.
know. The funny thing is, once okay, actually, let me start off here. We did our cheers, but guys, I'm so sorry. We're very, very, very late, and we won't be going very long tonight. So if you have any Seahorse questions, ask them now. Some announcements next week, I believe, as long as we can get all the scheduling done. We're going to have Jill Martin in. She's going to be our special guest. I will post some things about that throughout the week. But definitely tune in next week. We'll be on time, and we'll have a guest that is going to talk about a lot of stuff. Also, I am going to go. Ray left us. I don't think he meant to. He'll probably be back. Anyways, also, I'm going to get Sophie has a break this week. So I'm going to get with Sophie and teach her how to start Wine Wednesday so that if I'm ever, guys, I'm having crisis at home right now. If you can't see in the back, my daughters turned 18 today, my twin daughters, and one of them is struggling with some things in life. And so I will announce right now that if the stream ends, I apologize. I've got crisis going on at home with
There's
teenage
drama, teenage drama.
teenage drama. But I wanted to at least log in so that you guys know, I'm trying to never miss another Wine Wednesday, and I will teach Sophie so that from now on, if I'm dealing with something, she can start the stream and I can jump in when I can jump in. But Ray and Holly are always here on time. So even if Sophie's running it, if you guys have serious questions, I'm not the end all for sure. So they can always answer even if I'm not here. But I'm going to try to, of course. But anyhow, and I'm sure that we won't get many visitors tonight because I'm almost an hour late. But if you watch this later, just know that every week you can jump in. We're going to find ways to make sure it happens every week, even if I can't. And we're here to answer any, water quality questions, seahorse questions, fry questions, whatever. The last few weeks we've been talking about sourcing seahorses. Ray put on his page. He's starting a thing where you can source seahorses. I'm sure we'll talk with Jill about that a lot next week. But that's all coming. So, yeah. And Holly, you had something to show us this week, right?
I did, yeah. So I was also getting here late today because my husband and I were out and about earlier today. He had a doctor's appointment, and afterwards we went to his video game store because he's into video games. And at the video game store, they always have lots of related collectible toys and things.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm killing time looking all the stuff while Scott's, looking for his video games. And then what do I see but a seahorse?
Awesome. Here, let me read.
So this is a collectible toy seahorse, and here's a picture of the character. So
is that like Poseidon?
Aquaman. Huh?
Is that like Poseidon or what's the name?
It's Aquaman, I guess, and I'm not familiar. It's a comic, and I think they made a movie. I'm not a movie person either, but there's a DC comic. It's called DC Multiverse. And so the seahorse character, its name is Storm. So I'm going to open it up, and it looks pretty cool. So I'm going to open the box, and we'll get to see it.
Awesome. And I see you there, Sophie. Jump in if you want. We're not doing a long stream today, but I already announced to everyone that I was going to get with you this week so that we can talk about starting Wine Wednesdays on time. Go back and watch the beginning of this if you want to know all the drama. But bottom line is you're going to save the day in the future. And hi, Bonnie. I see you too. Hi, Zen. How y'all doing? If there's anything you do want us to talk about real quick, any Seahorse questions, or Sophie, if you have any announcements, definitely get them out there in case I have to end the stream rapidly. But again, we'll have Jill next week, guys, and Sophie and I are going to work on getting this going. But okay, back to Holly. Sorry.
So he's coming out of the box now. You attach his tail.
Okay.
He's pretty. He's pretty big.
Holly always finds all the
Oh,
cool
and he's
stuff.
got wings.
Yes, and Ginger, Jason Momoa, and the girl that was the big scandal. Who was Johnny Depp's wife? That's who played the girl in the movie. Cannot think of her name. Cannot. But
I can't either because I always think of Winona Ryder because I'm that old.
no, it's the girl.
That's who we used to date back
It's
in
the
the
girl
day.
who went. Oh, he's so cool.
Yeah, so it says I think he's a sea dragon. Oh, look at his head moves.
Oh,
He's posable too.
Holly always finds the cool stuff. All right, I'm gonna minimize you now, but that is really cool.
Yeah, so Scott got that for me.
Love it. Uh,
And it comes with a stand too, so you can stand it up on a shelf or something. Oh, and there's like a baseball card type thing for it
neat,
in here
neat.
too. For his character.
What's
So and I guess you can pose him on his ocean
Oh, I see.
background. Kind of cool.
Very cool.
Oh, and then Dandy had his birthday on Saturday. So Dandy is 6 years old now. I still have my Dandy.
Nice, nice. Sophie, I did see your comment that it's next week, not this week. That's fine too. Next week we have Jill as a guest anyways, so that'll work out perfect because I will make sure I'm here for the guest. And then me and you can get together next week and figure out the start. But Sophie said she has some unfortunate news. She only has 5 to 6 fry left. Whoa, what happened?
Oh, well, that happens.
Okay, wait. Before we back up, before we talk about the fry, because I'm spinning in circles, because the comments come to me after you guys send them, so it takes me a minute. But Zen, no. Remember the big trial, like, oh, I don't know, last year, the year before, with Johnny Depp and his ex-wife, where they were suing each
Yes.
other? What was her name? That's who I'm talking about. She was
Yeah.
in the Aquaman movie. I can't believe I can't think of it. Well, what? Oh, Heard, Amber Heard. That's it. Thank you, Sean. All right, Amber Heard. That's who I was thinking of. And Zen says, "Happy birthday, Dandy." All right. So
Thank you.
exactly. So, and I'm a terrible Seahorse mommy because I have not. I
Oh,
don't. Oh, that's so cool.
cool little
What's
collector
what's
card.
the on the back? What's it say?
So it says data file, real name Storm. Rescued by Aquaman, Storm, a majestic albino sea dragon, is the superhero's trusted, loyal companion, bravely riding into battle with the Atlantean king.
Woohoo! Cool. Oh, that's my other announcement. I don't know if was I wearing this last week?
Yeah, you just got it. What's going on?
No. That's it. It's the same thing, tendonitis or something, but it's hard to type
Oh,
to write. It's been all right.
oh, I think you didn't know what it was at the
With
time. They
the
were figuring
doctor,
it out.
tendonitis. I'm getting old, y'all.
Uh,
That's why we need Sophie. But Sophie said that as far as the fry, she's not fully sure what happened. It happened very suddenly, and she lost quite a few very quickly. Any thoughts, guys?
Well, first off, it's the first batch for these seahorses, and it's very common that first and even later batches aren't viable yet because the adults uh, aren't capable yet of producing viable eggs, or the male
healthy.
might not have his whole system mature enough to produce or to take the eggs and produce a viable fry from those eggs, even if the eggs are viable. So that's not an uncommon thing.
True.
And I got kicked off. I was on my computer, and I got a blue screen saying the device had a problem or shutting down. So I switched over to my laptop, but the PC's booting up there, so I'm gonna end up, I'll try to get back on the PC again.
Okay, I am still here, guys. Like I said, I might just have to disappear for a minute. And I didn't really honestly hear everything Ray said. But Holly, what are your thoughts on losing a lot of fry? Your first batch losing a lot of fry quickly.
That's very common. I think just like Ray said, when it's a pair's first batch, like I said about mine, none of my very first batch made it. Of course, I didn't have their food ready, so that probably played a part in it. But looking back after raising later batches, I realized they probably wouldn't have made it anyway because they were too frail to begin with. Now, then, the second batch out of, I want to say there was 63. I have my journal with me. I think the second batch, 63 were born, and I only raised 5 to adult. And usually, the time that I found that you lose the most is about the end of the first week. And it's probably a combination of things at that point. It could be things that are wrong with them. It could have to do with the water quality, or I mean, there's all kinds of things when they're that young and frail that can take them out. So it's very common to lose quite a few in the first week or so, I found.
Yeah, that was my question. How long did she have them exactly? Do we know?
I want to say she was saying they're a week, maybe going on 2 weeks now. Yeah, what was the age you lost them at, Sophie? How long you had them?
Well, because I totally agree with everything you just said, Holly. And we're seeing Ray transfer, and we're seeing the cute pups. Cool.
Yeah.
But so the things that I would add to everything that Holly just said. Sorry, come back in here. The things that I would add is I always tell people that are trying for fry, your first batch, you're throwing darts at a board, right? Like, we're lucky to have this community and help each other and give each other advice on how to set up for fry and such. But there's so many different ways, and people are successful with different ways. And when I started with fry, like the first batch, I had one survive. That's it. Because, and sorry, I'm jumping around, but we've also talked a lot about the fact that it depends on the age of the seahorse. Sorry. It depends on the age of the seahorse. So most people get seahorses and they're 4 inches and they start trying to make babies right away, and they don't have it figured out, right? So the male doesn't know how to give enough nutrition to the fry. The female doesn't know how to make really strong eggs. So they fail, and then we fail, and it's just a recipe for disaster.
It's hard to get into it.
Well, but
it takes a while to get your routine and all that too, and learn and know enough to recognize also which ones are going to make it and which ones probably won't. Because I found the more batches I had, I could tell looking at them
which would make it.
What kind of chances they were going to have.
That's a really controversial. Oh, you know what? I just figured out my light's not on. That's why I look so dark, or I look so spotlighted. Anyways, sorry. ADHD. Woo, squirrel. Okay. What I was gonna say is, totally agree with that, Holly, and that's a controversial topic because when people get to the level of commercial breeder, Dan would often call the fry that he knew wasn't going to make it because you're providing resources to all these fry, and if there are some you know aren't going to make it, you're a commercial breeder and trying to large scale this thing. Of course, okay, sorry. So of course, you're looking to have the most healthiest fry survive. Whereas if you're a hobbyist like me and Holly, we're like every little teeny one we want them to live.
You're trying to save them all. Yeah. I remember having ones, they'd be laying on the floor
Yeah.
And what I would do is
Talk
I'd
for a minute,
collect
Holly.
the dead ones with a turkey baster and suck them up, the ones that were dead. And sometimes I'd have ones that I think they were dead, and then all of a sudden they'd come back. They'd get up and start swimming, and they probably weren't going to make it anyway. But I didn't have the heart to dispose of them. I'm like, oh, this one's still alive. I'd put it back in. Oh, we lost Kelly, I think. There
Here I am. I'm sorry. Like I said,
you
guys,
go.
I have to disappear for a minute. What were you asking me? I'm so sorry, Holly.
Oh no, I was just saying I remember having ones. They'd be probably dying.
Yeah.
They were laying on the bottom, and the dead ones I'd always collect. I'd suck them out with a turkey baster, right,
Yeah.
to get rid of them. Well, sometimes there'd be ones laying there, and they weren't dead yet. They'd get up and
Yeah.
and start moving. I used to set them aside in cups to be sure,
Yeah.
because they'd wake up and start moving, and they probably weren't going to make it anyway, but I didn't have the heart to
Right.
dispose of them, so I'd put them back. Oh, sorry.
Well, one of the things I remember, and I want to announce really quick, guys, for people like Zen Ginger that don't ever want fried, you'll never have these problems, right? Because you won't deal with it.
Yeah.
So don't be scared of keeping seahorses. We tend to talk about the negatives on this channel a lot, just because we're trying to help people or whatever. But that's like the minuscule times, right? So 90% of the time, everything's great. It's just sometimes this happens or this happens, but it's not usual. But for instance, I remember my first batch of fry were all like, there were so many because I had more grown, more adult seahorses that had already had batches that I didn't know. But anyways, they gave me a bunch of fry. I was only able to keep one alive, but then he gave me multiple batches, and you get time to get better and better at it. So there's more chances. But I'll never forget. I made the mistake. I added more macros to the tank that needed higher lighting, and I added a brighter light to the tank. Okay. And this light, I don't know why, but I blame the light. This male, all of a sudden, that it had 5 batches for me on schedule, all of a sudden, basically, I don't know the right word. I don't want to use the wrong word on YouTube, but well, let's just say he pushed out the fry before they were ready. And so they were literally, it was terrible. They were literally eggs with
Or
heads,
deformed. Yeah.
and they were not able to be, to grow up. And so, you got to be careful about changing things. But I'm just saying, all this stuff does happen, but it's like that's the one time that happened to me in a million, right? So sorry, guys. Ray, do you have any? Sorry, I'm so sorry. I'm so distracted tonight, you guys. I keep getting talked to on the other sides here. But what would you say about Sophie losing her fry?
Well, I already said.
But I mean, is there anything?
Well, there's nothing you can do. You wait till the next batch. But like, I haven't seen her seahorses, even though she's just down the street. But she may not have had them long enough to build up their personal health situation. Like, I don't know. Like, Sophie, are they straight sided when you look at them front on? Are they straight sided? Are they the sides of convex, or are they concave? That it makes a difference. If the sides are coming outwards instead of straight, then they should be fairly healthy. Then, if they're still straight on their sides, then you've got a ways to go yet to get them to their peak condition.
That's a great point, Ray, and that's something, Sophie, that I'll talk with you personally about when we work on this Wine Wednesday thing next week. But great point, because the thing is, you get a pair of seahorses and they start giving you fry, right? Because they're just horny little teenagers and they want to make fry. But again, I keep comparing commercial breeders, but you can do it at a hobbyist level. But I'm using the example of a commercial breeder because they do it so extensively and they have the knowledge. But what they'll do is they pick out their healthiest male and female that are courting or whatever, and they will often even separate them from the rest of the seahorses and treat them. I don't want to say treat them better. That's not the right way to say
Well,
it.
they condition them. They,
That is the word. That is the word. And they will, give them maybe a different feeding regimen, or they play with temperature, or they will give them more live feeds or more enriched feeds, and etc., to get those two so healthy and so away from anything that could hurt them or give them any infections or bacteria or whatever, that when they have fry, those fry are healthier, right? So there's all these different tricks, but as a hobbyist, that's hard to do. And you can succeed as a hobbyist. There's so many of us succeeding. Well, not me right now. I have no fry, at least for getting fry, right? But I'm just saying, we know so many people, and I can't wait to talk to Jill next week because she's going to have lots to say too. But
and eventually you'll get some to make it. You'll have some make it to adults. And when you really think about it, they have so many fry that if they did all survive, you couldn't handle it anyway.
right,
So, I mean, I feel happy with what I got. I mean, I've had 5. I was just looking at my notes. So I had Sadie's batch. There was 63 born. I had 5 survivors. The next batch he had, there was only 14 born. Um, 3 of those lived past a week. And then only one of them ultimately made it to adult. And that was my Scrappy Doo seahorse, who was one of my favorites. He was the only survivor of that batch, and he was a big seahorse. He was a little scrappy thing. That's why I named him Scrappy Doo. I didn't think he had very good chances of making it when he was a fry. He didn't look like a survivor, but he did. He made it to adult. And then I had one batch where there was a lot of them born, 143 I wrote down, and then like 20 more the next day or something. So there was 163 of them. Oh, it was 20 the first day. So those were the warning fry, I guess. And then the next day, 143. And out of that batch, I had about 20 survivors. So I kept some and I sold some. So, I mean, you have plenty of time to learn and grow, and you will have ones that make it, down the road.
yeah. I was curious, Ray. What were your numbers way different? You had way more success, didn't you? But you had them giving you more fry. Ray wasn't listening.
I'm sorry.
Ray wasn't
What
listening.
was that?
So what I was going to say is you can just see the difference, and it is, depends on the health and the conditioning of the adults, because Holly's seahorses were only giving her, so many fry, whereas like
And
my
they were
first,
young too. Like
yeah,
Sophie, they were only 5 or 6 months old. I mean, as soon as I got them, they started producing fry. And honestly, that's my only male that ever had fry. All
right.
those batches came from him.
So I want to say, first of all, Book Lover 7, hey, we welcome anybody, but we do
Yeah.
talk a lot of seahorse talk.
It's somebody that Sophie knows.
Yeah, and we love all Sophie's friends. Jill Martin actually said she was going to invite a bunch of people from Instagram. So we'll be more put together next week. I'm having crisis in my house this night, so it's kind of a chaotic Wine Wednesday. But go look at some previous ones, and especially the ones that have guests or the ones that have titles, because it's not always just open chat where we talk about toys, figurine seahorses or fry.
Yeah.
sometimes we talk about water quality or have guests and etc. It's a fun channel. We're a community. We welcome everyone who's nice. But no, what I was going to say is like my first batch, because my seahorses were older when I got them, I had 200 to 300 first batch right off the, right off. So, but I mean, then that makes me look worse because I was only able to keep one alive, right? But
can you imagine if 200 seahorses made it? How
no,
that
yeah.
what your house would look like?
Okay, so just to give
You'd
you
be
guys
living in the garage. Your whole house would be fish tanks.
just to give you guys an idea. And Sophie, don't get scared because if you do get really successful at this, you'll start making money at it, and then it'll be a different thing. So don't get scared. But well, great. But what I was gonna say is, I started off. I could only keep one fry alive. The next batch, I got 3 to live. So it was easy for me to just blend them into my seahorse communities because I had literally 10 tanks going in my house of different species, right? And so I had multiple tanks that I could either, add them to or set up a new little tank or whatever. Then Cheryl, who used to come to the channel, and Dan taught me how to do the tubs. And that was the game changer. Well, 2 things changed my game. 1 was the tubs, and 2 was using peroxide and enrichment in the feed. Okay.
The
Now, we talked about that
before. Really ups your numbers, I found.
Yeah.
And I think Sophie mentioned she wasn't using peroxide in the beginning. And start doing that. And that's what did it for me because I started having more make it past that first week after the peroxide.
So something about the Artemia, they're dirty, right? And so, and they're eggs and it's just dirty. And so if you add that peroxide to your regimen after enrichment and you clean them before they're fed to the seahorses, all of a sudden you start having success. And so when I set up my tubs and I started using the peroxide in my enrichment, oh my gosh, all of a sudden I literally had like 30 seahorses that were adolescents. They're this big. They're eating frozen foods. And I'm like, oh, what now? Right?
Yeah, what do I do with them?
Because you have to do something with them between the phase of, okay, they're eating frozen foods and they're getting bigger, but they're not big enough to sell. Right?
Yeah.
I'm setting up a 90-gallon tank for my adolescents. You can see videos on them, but I mean, and it worked out, it just keeps growing and getting bigger as you get more successful. So Sophie, don't beat yourself up. Be glad that maybe as you're experimenting, you got to break this time because if you get a couple to live, you can still maintain within your
you don't have to start buying like 100-gallon tanks for the juveniles because they reach a point where they aren't ready for you to sell them yet, but they're big enough that they need water volume and good water quality. And if you can't give them a big tank, a lot of water, you're going to be doing a lot of water changes. Like I went through that with my little batch of 5 survivors because all I had at the time when they reached that point was a 30-gallon normal tank with a hang-on back filter, the kind you put the little pads in. And
Ray, how did it go for you?
Water every other day.
How did it go?
Sorry?
But actually, I want to ask before I ask Ray, if Bonnie's still here, I want to see where you're at in your process because I know Bonnie and Zen were both wanting to do seahorses but hadn't yet. So let me know where you're at in that process. Sophie, I'm sorry, Ray. What I was asking is, how did you deal with that when you started having more success and started keeping more fry alive? And you had to find a place to put them. Did you just set up more?
Oh, when you're looking at back in those days, I had 1,000 gallons of salt water in the basement. That wasn't a big problem.
Gotcha.
Now, mind you, pretty well everything was occupied at that time, but then I always found ways. I actually did set up a couple other systems, um, but it took a while before I got to the point where I went to the round tubs and raised them in that until they needed bigger situation. Then I moved them into the aquariums. But I already had some 55s and
Yeah.
some 40s that I had no problem moving them in. I just moved things around, sterilized the tank, and used them for seahorses. But see, for me, first of all, when I started, we didn't know near as much
Right.
as we know now. And I started with reed eye, and reed eye are much more difficult to start off the fry. Once you get past a few weeks with the fry, then it's about the same as erectus, but those first few weeks are quite different.
Sure.
First of all, they're smaller, and normally they can't eat the brine shrimp when they're first hatched. And so you need copepods or some other live food. And I had some little success once I got onto it. I had a little bit of success using San Fran cysts to make the brine shrimp, because the San Fran brine are a little bit smaller than the Great Lakes. And but it's still, they weren't really, there was sufficient in there to do what I had at the time, but that was still small batches that I was getting in. Like when I got into the 600 and 700 fry at a time, that was later on.
Yeah.
As the seahorses got older.
You guys imagine having 600 or 700.
I didn't personally experience it, but I know on seahorse.org there were people on there that were dealing with like 11 and 1200
but that's the key, though, is that you, as you start getting better at it, so do the seahorses, and then you start preparing for it, and you're ready for it. And you have your food ready, and you figure out enrichment, and you figure out peroxide, and you figure out space, and you get better and better, and then you become a commercial breeder.
And where they're going to go, where they're going to live, because they can't all live with you.
Right. I mean,
actually, very, very few will actually ever make it to commercial breeder.
I think.
And then if you make it to commercial breeder, there isn't any that stay at it long term.
Dan did.
Dan was the longest. Other than that, nobody else has ever lasted.
Because you have to have a passion for it. So
I think you have to get into other stuff. I think it's an aquaculturist, when you're doing other things besides the seahorses, I think that helps.
Sure, absolutely. That's what Alyssa did. Yep, absolutely. But I think that
Alyssa got burned out too.
I know. But what I'm saying is, that's why we need hobbyist breeders. That's why we need them. My current seahorses are from Holly, Vincent, and Macro Lady. They're all from hobbyist breeders. Mm-hmm. The ones that I have right now are from hobbyist breeders. So, I mean, and they're not giving me fry. Maybe I should blame all of you guys. No, I'm just kidding. Totally kidding. But
I wouldn't be surprised, because mine aren't either, which is fine with me. I like them being the little pets that they are, and they still flirt and play, and they're interested in each other. But they're not making babies. Right. And honestly, I'm not in a position now like I was during COVID, where I have the time and ability to go through all that.
I've said repeatedly, my seahorses probably know that I honestly don't have the time either. So even though I want the fry, they're not giving them to me. They're like, you won't take care of my babies. Yeah. But Sophie's
I want to fry without the work.
Right. I
just want to look at them.
But no,
they can't live with their parents and just do their own thing without our care.
Right. But the other thing is, though, I really feel like as you get better at it, you streamline a process and it does get easier.
Mhm.
Like I don't want anybody to leave tonight and feel like, oh, I could never do fry because it's so difficult. No, we've all done it, you know. I mean, it's just
Yeah, yeah.
it takes work, but then you figure it out and then you have a process and literally
Mhm,
you know on the calendar when your fryer going to be born because you get
mhm.
so used to it and so and again backing up a little for people like Zen who don't want fry. Obviously, you know, Holly and I Seahorses aren't giving us fry. Hers are older,
Mhm,
but mine aren't. And so
mhm,
there's lots of circumstances where they don't give you fry.
mhm.
Um, and you know that can be okay too because they're such fun pets and they're so
Or
it's
just
so
get
they serve 'em.
females, get a tank of all females. I love the girls, and they're friendly with each other too. They're very social. So, yeah,
see
they
see
do hang out together, even just girls.
I feel like you and I have argued about this before or me and someone because I feel the exact opposite. I mean, I'm not saying that females won't hang out together
Mhm.
and play together, but I have always felt like in every situation, every species, every tank I've ever had, it's always the males that are more active, that, you know, two males will court with each other, trying to figure out why they aren't getting
Oh, yeah,
eggs. I mean, they're obviously
yeah.
idiots.
Well, you were the
They're
one that argued
terrible
with
to
me
real
on
men.
that.
No, I'm just kidding. What? What'd you say, Ray?
You argued with me about that.
With you? Okay. Okay. So
Yeah. And then Holly backed me up.
yeah. Well, you're wrong. You're
Well,
both
my
wrong.
males, I'll say I love my males. They have so much personality and they're really cool. But my females have always been the ones that seem, more interested in each other in general. Like the males will be interested in the females, but the females are interested in everybody. Yeah,
See, I
they're
think you guys
friendly with they're
are crazy.
friendly with each other, whereas my
I
males
have.
wouldn't really. They'd sit together sometimes, but they wouldn't, be as active as
Let me
the
back up.
females, I
Let
guess.
me back up because I will tell you guys. Okay, first of all, I want to say something before I forget. Obviously, I can't type with this thing. I didn't mean to say have a good nugget, Sophie. I meant to say have a good night. And Zen, if they do give you fry, though, we've already talked about it. I swear I'm not kidding you. I'll pay for you to send them to me. Like there's plenty of people that don't have fry
Mhm.
that want to play, you know, want to try with them that, you know, you can. And I just don't think you should feel guilty. Here's the other last thing I'll say about this is I don't want to sound like I don't want to sound crass. But the thing is, in captive breeding, us as hobbyists, we're dealing with captive bred seahorses, number one. And number two, you can't imagine how many more fry we are keeping alive than stay alive in the ocean. It's
Yeah.
just, you know, I mean,
They
we're
say
there's
what? I think it's one in a
this
thousand.
batch, you're not,
One in
yeah,
a
you're not
thousand
doing
born in
any,
the ocean makes it to adult, I think is the
yeah,
ratio. So,
which is nuts. So right, they don't have the predation. Anyways, you know what I'm saying. I'm just saying, you know, there should be no guilt, and I get it. We all have it,
mhm.
but there shouldn't be. Now, what the hell was I gonna say? Because I was on a topic and I totally lost it because I went off in left field. Oh, we were arguing about the males and females. Okay, so the one thing I will say is I think I have an actual video about my bachelor tank. If not, I've talked about it repeatedly. And I literally at one point had a bachelor tank because I had a couple different tanks of
Mhm.
erectus and I had three males out of all these tanks, right? So I had probably 20 different erectus, okay, adults. But I had three different males from different tanks that just couldn't get along. And what I mean by couldn't get along is they would, if you've never seen males fight, they can snick
They
each
snick
other.
each
They
other.
like
Yeah, I've seen it.
and they'll wrestle and they'll just like fight over the girls
Mhm.
and yeah, that can happen. That's a thing. So I've always said males need their territories. They need space. They need to have a if you're going to have males, you need to have a bigger
Mhm.
tank. But In this situation, I had 3 different males, 3 different tanks that could not get along in their tank. I was constantly they were interrupting the courting process because I'd have a pair that are trying to do the spin to the top to do the egg exchange, and here he comes shooting across the tank.
Yeah.
They like dive in the middle of them and try to get in on it, and it's like stop. So, anyways, I set up a
Yeah.
bachelor tank and I put these 3 males together in a tank. The first day was absolute hell. They went at each other. It was, and then they figured it out,
Mhm.
right? There's no girls in this
There's
tank, so
just
there's
us.
nothing to fight over. There's just us, and if we just keep killing each other, it ain't gonna work. And they all found their little, like, they all swam around and they came for food together and they ate
Mhm.
together, but they had their sections and they like seriously did not go in each other's
Yep.
sections. It was
Yeah.
really insane to see that male seahorses acting like
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
like human.
But that's kind of my point about the males and females, because the females will hang out together. They're not as territorial. They'll hang out with anybody. I don't ever see my females fight, and they make the rounds. Like, I don't know how the seahorses decide who they're going to hang out with for the day, or whatever, but you'll see like a pair of them together all day, and then next day somebody's hanging out with somebody else. And because in that tank I have 3 females and only 1 male, and they're all taking turns hanging out with the male too. And
Gotcha.
sometimes he'll have 2 girlfriends for the day.
Yep.
Sometimes just 1, but they seem to take turns, and everybody gets along. Now, Dandy, my oldest seahorse, he used to fight with Scrappy Doo and Sandy, my other males. He used to fight especially with Scrappy Doo over Sadie, because he loved Sadie. And the cool thing is Sadie preferred Dandy. Scrappy
Yeah.
Scrappy Doo scared her. He was too rough.
Yep.
And Dandy has always been a really friendly seahorse to everyone, even the males, and unless he was, competing for a female. When I introduced Scrappy Doo to the tank, and Scrappy Doo was still a juvenile at the time and smaller, than I would sell a seahorse for. He was a little guy. And Dandy made friends with him and Sadie. I put them both in at the same time. And Dandy was always the first one to make friends with a new seahorse in the
Hmm.
tank. But he really liked Sadie, and Scrappy Doo was macho. He went for all the females in the tank. So
Yes.
he
The
was
younger guy.
he was
Yeah.
going for Sadie. Dandy wouldn't have it. He'd
Yep.
defend Sadie's honor.
And that's it. Okay, so first I want to say, Ray, stop scaring people. Bonnie, don't be scared. I think your plan to do just females at first is a good one, but do not be afraid. Ray said what? Ray said, uh, oh no, wait, wrong thing. Bonnie, if you don't want Fry, you'll get them. If you want them, you won't. Ray, quit it. Quit it. That's not true. Zen, don't be scared. Don't listen to him. He's lying. Um, and we can talk about the late development
Mhm.
too.
Yeah.
And you said Teresa had a bunch of Fry but lost them. Tell her to get in here. We need to
Mhm.
talk to her. But yeah, no. Dang it! I keep losing what I was gonna say. What were you just?
You were going to crucify me.
No, I was not. I don't listen to him. I just said
Yeah.
don't
You
listen
wanted to
to him.
talk about late
But
developing.
I mean, we can talk about. It was something else, but it doesn't matter. It was just a point based on what Holly was saying. But it's gone. So yeah, let's talk about late developing. Go ahead.
You want me to say something?
I want you to
Well,
say it.
it just what I say. Like you can have uh, fry that are 4 or 5 months old, even, and they
Mhm.
look like females, but unless you know what to look for, they are actually males. So
Mhm.
you get sold a pair of females because it's hard to determine what they
Mhm.
actually are. And then maybe when they're to about a year old, and sometimes I had one that was over a year, and I don't remember exactly how much over, but it was over a year. And all of a sudden it turned male. But the thing was, I knew that that one was going to change to a male because
How? How did wait? How did you know?
position
So
of
No,
the
I have
it
a
anal fin.
question.
probably
How
didn't change though. It was always a male. You just couldn't
Right.
tell.
did
Yeah. You
right?
look at the anal fin. The anal fin on a
Okay.
male is slightly forward of that of a female. And it's easier if you have a female to compare it with.
Mhm.
And excuse me, uh, with young fry, like if you got some 2 month or 3 month olds, it's harder there because everything's smaller. The spaces are smaller to compare with, but still, if you got a bunch of fry there and you start looking and comparing at a bunch of them, you'll be able to pick up. You might not pick off every single one, but you should be able to pick off males. And some people
Yeah.
actually will start picking them off as they notice it and separate them and let them grow separate.
Hmm.
Ah,
Yeah,
interesting.
that's interesting.
That's and I do want to ask, am I crazy? You guys can say if I am, but I've always noticed that the females seem to have a dark circle underneath their like
Mhm.
they've got the stomach or not the stomach, but they've got
Yeah.
the
But
round part,
in the
then
anal
they've got the
area,
ovipositor, and then they've got where the male's
Dark
pouch is,
circle.
right? Where the tail connects to the stomach.
But
And on
they
all my
don't.
females,
They don't
hang
all.
on, finish. Let me finish. Well, that's what I was going to ask you. Is I've noticed I haven't had a female that didn't have that dark
Mhm.
spot right there. You're saying you have seen them without it?
Yeah, and I
yes,
think we had that discussion before, and I
we
think I
did.
went looked at
I
mine, and I have a female or two that don't have it,
Yeah.
but most of them
darn it,
do. Most of them do.
darn it.
I've
I've had
noticed.
lots that don't have that,
Hmm.
especially with the reed
Yeah.
eye.
So the
And
only
when
way
you
to
have
yeah, see,
more
I think
seahorses,
I
see, I don't have that many. I haven't seen hundreds of seahorses, so I only have
right.
seen in my tanks what I have. And out of mine, I want to say I think there's two maybe that don't, and the rest do.
But I'm also going to say for Bonnie and Zen, who are already fearful about this stuff, and then we come in here and say all this, and you're like, oh God, these occurrences of a female all of a sudden developing a pouch and trying to pick apart and make sure by the anal fin that it's really a female, they're like one in what would you say, Ray?
No,
1,000?
no,
I mean, like,
I couldn't even hazard a guess on that.
yeah, I mean
Yeah.
Often
it's
No.
not
I
common.
found that if I had a batch with one in it, there would be more.
Really.
Yeah,
So so the batch would just have a bunch of males that were late
right.
bloomers. Gotcha.
And
Mhm.
that could have
But
been
I
for
mean,
the conditions when in the female when the eggs were being produced. It could have been in the male when the eggs
sure.
were being hatched, or just some genetic freak situation that happened, a combination that particular male with that particular female. Like, there's no way to know. I'm not a pathologist that can sit.
I mean, but I mean, somebody. I get your whole point, but and I didn't mean to interrupt you. I apologize, but somebody buying seahorses for the first time maybe is very uncomfortable with knowing how to dissect what anal fin air
Mhm.
what way the anal fin's leaning or whatever. But I mean, the breeder or the person selling them should know at that
Most,
point
yeah,
is
if
what you're
you're
saying.
buying from a breeder, they usually won't sell them until they're sexed. Like
Uh,
Exactly.
I didn't sell mine until I knew who was male and female. And so they'd be a certain size. They might be older than the 5 months. Like some of mine, were like 6 months old or so before I sold them. And they were all developed enough to where I knew who was a girl and who was a boy. Now, if you go to a pet store, they might be selling them a little smaller before they're fully developed. So I think maybe then you run into more of a chance where it's not known.
Well, the way
No,
I
I
look at
agree.
it, it's
And
not just that, because, like I say, how would you have known if you sold one at 6 or 7 months? How would you have
Hmm.
known it wasn't a late one that was going to develop, say, at 10 months or 12 months?
Hmm.
well, but
I
you
Usually,
just
never
said,
had,
Ray, that
well, I
you
never
have
had
nails.
any like that though.
yeah.
So I always like, even the ones that didn't fully have a pouch yet, I could tell they were going to be male because they had the starter one. Just the shape was a little different, and I could tell because I was used to seeing them, I guess.
But if you actually had late developers, you wouldn't have seen that difference.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't have. I just never had that happen. I never had any of mine that did that.
Turned. Well, and again, guys, we talk about the bad rare stuff, and it's not even bad, but we talk about the things that might help somebody down the line.
Hmm.
It doesn't happen very often, and it doesn't happen in every case. Zen asked, are there any males with that spot though? Like if they had a spot, is it definitely a female? Ray, go ahead, because you were answering in the chat.
Yes, there are males with it.
So I've never seen one. Really? The male with a pouch has that dark spot on the tail?
On my
You're muted.
seahorses, it's where the pouch would be. So none of my
Yeah.
males would have it because they have a pouch in that spot. So the spot would be
I
in a different place, I would say, if they had one.
so so Ray, I think you're muted. I don't know.
Oh,
I
okay.
didn't mute
Sorry.
you. So go ahead and say what you were going to say.
Um, when the hasn't developed yet, the spot can be there, but still he get the dark area and it'll be in the anal area anyway. Like even when he's got the pouch, he still has the anus, and the dark spot can appear there around that anus as well. And it's not something
So you know,
they don't
young,
automatically have it. Some have had it and some haven't, and
but like once a
some will get
go
it.
ahead.
It's not. It's just like a discoloration. Doesn't go real dark. Some is just a little discoloration, and that's it. And then on others, it's so obvious that you can see it from 10 feet away.
Holly, remind me to take a picture of what I'm talking about so that everybody, because everybody's probably like, what are you guys talking about? A big dot on, I will take a picture
I'll try
and
to
show you guys
remember
exactly
because, yeah,
what we're talking about.
I notice it on mine. Yeah,
Yeah.
my girls have that. Oh, and I wanted
Well,
to say,
wait. I wanted to say though, Ray, you're talking about when they're really young. Once a male has a pouch, he does not have that
Yes,
spot.
he can get it right at the where the anal fin of the anus is.
All right, y'all, I'm telling you, Ray's crazy. Don't listen to him anymore. No, I'm just kidding.
Kelly.
But I can't believe that. I've never seen a male with that spot. Maybe it's because the pouch is hiding it.
You
But
watch
on it,
the
that's
males,
male.
and once you see them defecate, you look in that area, and you'll see some of them that have the darkening right where they're defecating.
But it doesn't stay there.
The discoloration can be there, and it can go away. It's like other markings on seahorses. They're not all markings aren't permanent. Like they do, the seahorse
I
has certain permanent characteristics, but they have other characteristics that are exhibited through other things, like coloration can change, so on through stress or just what they perceive as hazardous conditions. And I don't know what changes. Like I know that there's other markings that come and go. I actually don't know why they come up at any given time. My only thoughts were maybe it's part of thing like if they're like early on they can have Siri, and once they realize they're not uh, in
sure.
a threatening condition anymore, they lose those Siri. Well, these other things may be still a part of that camouflage. I don't know.
Okay. Maybe. I just, well, it'll help, guy. It would help if I had a picture for you guys. I will have a picture next week. We're going to have Joe Martin on, but I'll show you guys before we start with her because, like, with me, to me, Zen and Bonnie, like, I feel like that is a good indicator. Obviously, they've proven that it's not all the time, but if you see that what I show you next week, a big like round dark spot where the pouch should be, like right where the tail, at the very top of the tail, that to me, they're usually female. Is
I'm
all.
gonna
I'll
look
leave
at
it there.
pictures of Sadie because
There's
she
always
has
an
one, I
exception.
think, and I'm pretty sure I've pictures of it.
I
But
had
I
one
was
I
of the
know I
black,
do too.
say
black
If
to
you
reed
want to
eye.
take a
Bonnie,
look.
You couldn't see anything on them.
What'd you say,
I
Ray?
said I had a lot of black reed eye that I would sell, but you couldn't actually see much of anything on them. It was like black just sort of
I
covered
will
everything.
agree with that 100%. I will agree with that 100%. And I will say that I am mainly talking about Erectus because my Barbary did have the females. I had two different females did have the round spot, but they were so translucent and like pinkish and clear that it was a different kind of. So I'm mainly talking about Erectus. I can't speak for every species. Reed eye are very different. I only kept reed eye once, so I don't feel like I can really, give an opinion on reed eye. And I do agree though that if they're completely black seahorses, they're gonna be, not show that. I've never had a female that was black though. You've had black females? Was it just reed eye, Ray?
I had reed eye fry that would grow up, and they stayed black at 6 and 8 month stage. Actually, the reed eye fry that are on my website, I think there's 6 or 8 months there, and they're all black. But I had
Yeah.
from the same adults, I had fry that turned up and were brown.
Interesting.
Yep.
Holly, have you ever had a female erectus that stayed black all the time?
none of mine stayed
I
black.
haven't had an erectus do that or a
I've
barb.
had none stay black their
Well,
whole
no,
lives. As fry, they would be black, but none of them grew up
yes.
to be
Yeah.
black.
Well, no, that's the part that was interesting to me is I was just thinking everybody used to admire and talk about my seahorse that looked purple because of the lighting,
Mm-hmm.
but he was really my male that gave me all the fry. He was jet black,
Mm-hmm.
and he would turn like this gray color when he was courting
Mm-hmm.
because he would lighten up, and that's how I knew that they were getting frisky,
Yeah.
right? But on a regular basis, he was just black. He wasn't sick. He wasn't
Yeah,
anything. He was just a
Dandy's
black
very
seahorse.
dark, but he's a dark brown.
But I've
He's
never,
not black.
I've see, yeah. Well, I haven't seen a lot of seahorses that are, so that's why he was kind of unique. But I've never seen a female that's black and stays black. Um, I've seen it in reed eye, but again, not the female. Yeah, I don't know why, but the females just tend to be lighter. Would you guys agree with that?
Sorry, I agree with
Mine
what?
are.
No, Ray wouldn't.
Mine are. I'd say mine are. But I also wanted to, while I'm thinking of it, tell Bonnie not to worry about the males getting gas bubbles in their pouch. It's actually very rare. I only had
Yeah.
one male, my male that was producing fry. A couple of times, he had that. But what he really had, I found he had problems with bacterial infections. He
Yeah.
got back-to-back bacterial infections, and I think part of it was because he was young, he was producing fry all the time. The tank conditions weren't ideal, so he was probably kind of run down health-wise, stressed from always mating and producing fry. And I lost him fairly young. But none of my other males ever had bubbles in their pouch, ever. So
And guys, I tell
it
stories.
happens,
Like
but
I said,
it's not like a everyday thing.
I totally agree. I try to say this every time we stream that, what we're talking about are specific examples in hundreds, right? It's not normal. It's not something you would deal with just because you buy a pair of seahorses. We're just giving the story in case someone along the line, down the line, needs it, right? And needs to come here and ask about these questions. They know we've experienced it. I have experienced one male that had gas bubble, the pouch emphysema is what it's called, and then I did have one male that had tail bubbles, but the neither one of them died of it. And I've had a lot of seahorses, right? So it's not like, oh, I had 5 seahorses and 2 of them were, had problems. No. And I can say that I am very convinced that those issues are related to bacterial problems and care of the tank. And I'm saying that looking at myself, right? Because in both of the cases where something occurred like that, it was because of me not caring for the tank the way that I should. I did also in my first tank have a seahorse that, no, you know what? I'm lying. I had two seahorses that had pouch emphysema, but the first one was in my very first tank, and I visually saw the male scrape his pouch, and he had this white patch on his pouch, which again says bacteria, right? And then he got pouch emphysema and had lots of trouble.
Can you share a
But
screen?
I can. Here we go. Here's the screen. What are we looking at?
Those are reed eye. There's male and female. They're all black.
Wow. That's crazy. How old were they,
And that one
though?
there, 8 months.
8 months. Yeah, so pretty much.
Yeah, so I guess it's not a thing. Maybe just with erectus. I don't know.
My
Beautiful, though.
reed eye were so beautiful. They were multicolor. They were like yellow with white and then brown spots. And they were so pretty. I loved my reed eye.
So
It's
I'm
been a
going to
long
ask you
time
this, Ray.
since I had those.
I'm going to ask you this because I have 2 experiences with reed eye. One time they were dark like that. One time they were ridiculously light, beautiful colored, all sorts of markings and all that. Do you think that we haven't advanced enough? Like, they keep adding species. They keep separating, oh, this was one species, now it's 2. There's the CUDA complex. There's, are these all the same, but they're just in different areas? Do you think that there are even more divisions in, like, there may be a northern and southern reed eye? I was asking you, Ray.
Well, I was reading. I was reading some of Zen's stuff.
Okay, my question is, so when I got into the scientific side of seahorses, going to MACNA and going to MBI and all that, I heard a lot about the CUDA complex. And, when we talk to the ichthyologists, they tell us that, what was his name? Oh my gosh, I'm not going to remember his name now. Anyways, bottom line is they talk a lot about all these new species that are popping up, that we don't know all the species of seahorses out there, and that sometimes in the older days they would lump a group of seahorses into a species based on the number of spines or whatever, but then they end up figuring out. And so, now we have northern and southern erectus, right? And so I'm wondering, because I've had 2 experiences with reed eye. One, they were very dark. They were very small. They were very, they had a very unique shape. They looked reed eye. And then I've had another experience with reed eye where they looked more like erectus, and they were very bright colored and very, had lots of markings. Do you think that there are different reed eye?
Just the 2, the north, or no, you got the blends. But the thing is, the CUDA complex, how that came about, and this was even before I got into it, but still 20 years ago it was still happening, where shippers overseas shipping seahorses over here it was much easier for them to put them in a bag and call them CUDA, and they might ship 5 or 6 similar looking seahorses. The people going through customs had no idea what it was anyway.
Mhm.
So they went
Gotcha.
through as CUDA, but they were other species,
Other things. Hmm.
and
Mhm.
that's
That makes sense.
part of that whole rigmarole. Um, but
They
then it
were
got to
never
the point,
CUDA to begin with. Sounds
yeah.
like they
But
were
then they
just
started finding some genetic characteristics similar in a few different ones that had some CUDA DNA, but other DNA as well. And I never did find what the final resolution on that was. I didn't keep an interest in it long enough for that.
His name's Graham Short. If you want to watch us talk to Graham Short about more of the, he's the ichthyologist that we had on the channel. I still talk to him sometimes. Maybe we'll have to have him back in if anybody's interested in that. I am, but it's just because I find it interesting. I know you guys are probably like, I want to know about keeping seahorses in my tank, not, but I just find it
But
interesting. So
originally, it came
I might have
around
him
just
on.
as a convenience to the shippers overseas to get them over here. It was easier to have paperwork for one species than that whole pile of different ones.
No, I get it. I get it. And yeah, so now I completely lost
well,
my
it's
train of thought.
interesting
Probably
too that they called them by different names too. I found out because I think I shared on one of our episodes some of my old seahorse books in my collection. So I
yeah,
have a book, I think it's 1958, of how to keep seahorses, and they're talking about erectus in the, but
yeah,
you can tell by the pictures, everything, but they didn't call them erectus then. They called them,
right.
and there was two different names they were using. They had the lined seahorse, which you still see it
Mhm.
called that, but there was something else too that I'd never heard them referred to as that. A name that we don't use anymore. I'd have to grab the book and take a look at it, but if I said it, nobody would think erectus.
I
But that's
remember
true of
that.
many other species, land and sea. Uh,
Mhm.
Things have changed as as technology has been able
Correct.
to
Yeah,
Yeah,
delve into it
science
more.
has
They have
progressed.
found that some that look the same and they thought were the same are different, and then they have found
sure.
others that look different but were the same.
Mhm.
Well, what I want to say is I appreciate all of you newcomers, seahorse keepers that haven't even gotten your seahorses yet, but you still hang out with us on Wine Wednesday when we talk about a bunch of fry and science.
And
So
toy
I appreciate
seahorses.
you still coming. Yeah. I mean, we just have fun together, but I'm just saying, I do want to have more episodes when you guys get your seahorses that are geared towards what you're going through and your questions about your new
Mhm.
tanks. So don't think that this is always going to be, fry and science. It's
Yeah, it's
just what
your
we got going
turn,
on right
Zen,
now.
now. We've been through it already.
Yeah, then we can't talk
Yes,
about your seahorses because you don't have them.
Yeah,
So we
that's
got to
it.
right.
talk about
Yeah.
Exactly.
other things.
And mine are just
Yes.
doing the same thing they've been doing every day
Yeah.
for 5 years, right?
Well, and that's why Sophie is gonna put a younger
Mhm.
perspective and a new oomph into Wine
Mhm.
Wednesday is because not only is she gonna help me run it and start it so we're on time, but also she's right there at the
Yeah.
beginning, with Fry. She can talk about the what's going on with her. It'll be
Mhm.
great. But anyways, I do, guys, it's running on 10. I don't see any questions we haven't answered. If you guys have questions, don't forget we have the group over on Facebook and we're here every Wednesday. So next week, like I said, I'm going to try to have that picture ready to show you before I even introduce Jill. And then when we talk to Jill, if you have questions that aren't related to what we're talking about, you can still ask them. And we will get to them eventually. Obviously, I'm not going to
Mhm.
interrupt what we're talking about, but I will always try to answer every question asked in the comment section. So, any seahorse questions, ask them. We will make sure. Yeah. So Zen said, even before I get there, I need to talk about the tank setup. I feel like I've glanced over most of the questions I had, but I need to ask y'all when I have a notebook and cut stuff down.
How many
Right.
years has she
Zen,
been waiting?
it's not been that long. But
See, I have
what I was
this every wine Wednesday since I started. Notes. And it's
amazing.
cool because you can go back in your notes when we're talking about stuff and find out notes about how to do stuff or what. So yeah, just have one of these when you're watching Wine Wednesday and write stuff down that you feel like you need to know or you want to ask, and then you can grab it. Oh yeah, I wanted to ask this, or that's the only
Yes.
way I can remember stuff is to write it
Well,
down.
and I'm not organized like that.
I have to
So
be.
that's why I often have to say, hey, Holly, go check your notebook. But yeah, we need more organized people in here because, I can tell you we need peroxide in the process, but I would have to go find my notes from talking with
Now,
Dan
off the
to tell
top
you
of my
exactly how
head, yeah, I
much.
can't tell you
Yeah,
how much or anything. And back when I was
right.
doing it, I could, because I did it every single day in and out. It was ingrained in my brain. But the fry I raised are 5 years old now, so I don't know what I did back then.
Well, see, and Zen, if your sources ever gave you fry and you sent them to me, then I'd be really up and up on all the doses and all that
Yeah.
because I'd be using.
Mm-hmm.
Send me some. No, I'm just kidding. But Ray, what are you saying now?
It's time.
So, I was just seeing Zen tell you to hush. But yeah, Zen, I know you don't want to be on camera or whatever, but I think that once we have Sophie in here too, like one day you could just be like use your voice or whatever, or have your questions typed out and we could cover. I really want to do that new tank setup because we keep saying we're going to do it. We've even tried to do it a couple of times, but I am ADHD and I go off into left field and I'm talking about other things and it never, specifically answers all those questions. I'd love to have an episode where we're like literally starting from tank size.
Yeah.
What do you put in?
Then you can go on
all
just
that.
and it'll just look like Kelly when she blacks out her screen and goes off to do something else.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, you just click on the camera button and you disappear.
Yep. So, and I mean, Sophie's helping us with that too. We did do one when she set up and she's all set up good and she's doing things differently than I do them, she's using Ray's ways. Nothing wrong with that. So, and I love that we share different experiences. And like, if she's unsuccessful, we can all say, see, you shouldn't have listened to Ray.
Well, the reason she's using my way is it just, I had contact with her dad and then all of a sudden he sees I've got these tanks here and that I was keeping Seahorses and he already knew that she was going nuts over Seahorses.
Yeah.
So he put us together and it was basically, well, she's only 14 years old and so
Yeah, I know.
economics is in there. So she could do other ways, but I was giving her stuff
Yeah.
to say.
Yeah, no,
She has you right down the street. So, if she has questions or needs help, she could say, Ray, can you come and help me with this, or show me how to do this or whatever. Whereas I never got that. I came on here and then had to translate what you guys told me.
Yeah.
Because it's a lot different. The hands-on, like sometimes you don't really know what you're looking at. Like for me, especially with the equipment, like I was always saying, I wish somebody could show me how to tune my skimmer, how to make it right. What is right? Because I've never seen it to compare, in right there in front of me. Like if I had Ray down the street, I could come over and say, Ray, show me what the skimmer's supposed to look like when it's running right. And he just.
Well, that's hard to do also because different people have different outlooks on skimming.
Right.
Some like
Yeah.
wet skimming,
Yep.
some like very dry, and of course in between you'll find some others there that are in between. So that's
Yeah.
a hard one to answer because I can show you what I would prefer, but that
Hmm.
doesn't mean it has to
Mhm.
be that way. But the main
Right.
thing is whether it comes out wet or dry is getting it out.
Is it getting out the crap?
And cleaning it. Like that's something
See,
that Dan
mine,
always talks
yeah. See,
about
I have
is that
one of my skimmers that it generally doesn't push all the stuff into the cup, but it pushes it
mm,
up into the neck where I can then wipe it out. So,
yeah,
and then you know, the thing I'll have is like, well, then I'll overdo it and then it's overflowing. You're right. It's either not enough or it's too much.
See, with
right,
my
right.
skimmers,
Skimmers are a pain in
there
the
was
butt,
no neck
but I
to
would
clean.
say that
Wasn't
what?
really a neck on my skimmers to clean.
Mhm.
And
Right, Ray, you had the
when you're
ridiculous,
looking at
yeah,
4-inch diameter, 6-foot high counter current skimmers,
Yeah,
they're a
yeah,
little bit different than your store bought
they're
skimmers.
typical.
Although
Yeah, I
back
can
when I first
imagine.
started
well, no,
in reefing in the 90s, counter current skimmers were pretty well the thing back then.
Hmm.
sure. Well, today you're probably not going to make your own skimmer or get huge at, you're going to have skimmer in a sump. And, that was just something I remember Dan always used to harp on is people are, doing the collection cup and dumping it and maybe cleaning that
But
out,
there's
but they're
crap in the
not
skimmer.
cleaning
Yeah,
the neck. And that crap is still,
it's still in there.
affecting the water. I think that's one of the biggest things with seahorses, or just in general, is that people come up with different ways and different methods, but they don't follow through to the
Yes.
finish. Like I really like algae scrubbers,
Hmm.
but the thing I always say is any macros, any algae, anytime you're using that as a resource for nutrition, for
Nutrient
not
removal.
nutrition
Nutrient removal.
and
Mhm.
export. Thank you. Anytime you're using macros or algae scrubbers for nutrient export, you
You
have to
have to
export it.
export them.
If you just,
Yeah.
I, if you're just not trimming them or leaving them in there, yeah, they're still doing something, but not what you want them to because the stuff's still
They
in the
That's
water.
actually
my
start to
freshwater tank is because I've plants in my freshwater tank and I have this moss that it takes over. Well, it's doing part of the job, like you said, of removing the nutrients from the water, which is why I got the plants. But then I have to remove them,
Yes, yeah,
do
exactly. That
some
is the key
pruning,
to it. And with the skimmer, it's removing the nutrients, but you have to,
remove the
dump it
nutrients. If the
and
nutrients are
remove.
in the neck of the skimmer and not in the skimmer cup, then you got to wipe
You
down
got
the
to get
neck.
down. Thank you. Yes. Bonnie said hippocampus hudsonianus. Hudsonianus.
Hudsonius. That sounds like
Yeah,
they live in the
Hudsonius.
Hudson River or something.
I don't know, but yeah. Anyways, guys, we've gone kind of into left field, but I think we've made some good, comments about different things, and it was still just fun to get with you guys. Thank you for letting me escape the crazy of my life right now at my house. Again, next week we'll have Jill. I will get with Sophie on the side, so that we're not as late anymore. And I appreciate Holly and Ray, you showing up every week. You're amazing. And all of you guys that comes, and Bonnie, um, everybody who's not here today. I was going to say earlier, another thing when we were talking about skimmers is Fish Fam Links. So Fish Fam Links comes often and supports the channel, and he supports a lot of YouTubers. And there's a lot of channels like Reef Dudes. I guarantee if you went to Reef Dudes and searched, you could find how to set the skimmer to the perfect thing. Again, that's his way. Like Ray said, everybody has a different way. Depends on what you're trying to accomplish. But if that's your question, there's an answer somewhere. And we do have not only a good community right here of seahorse keepers, but we've got friends, in the YouTube community that are doing their channels based on reef tanks and such that, they've come here. Heck, we've had many YouTubers on this channel. So anyways, And then, Jill Martin said she was going to have some of her Instagram people here next week. So, we'll grow the channel eventually. I just love having our small little community, and appreciate you guys all showing up is what I'm trying to say. But for tonight, I am going to call it, and then go deal with my chaos. But we will be back next week. I'll try to have that picture. We'll have Jill Martin. Watch for posts about it. Join our Facebook group for any questions in the meantime, and know that you can always ask questions no matter the topic every week. Anything else from either of you?
Yeah, just a comment. You always apologizing because we're always talking about bad things on here. But the thing is,
Yeah.
for people that have no problems, they don't need to be told.
Mm-hmm.
They don't need to be
Right.
told good
Well,
things.
Mm-hmm.
no, and I get that, and you're right. You're right. But I just want any newcomers not to be afraid. And I want those people that are having good experiences to come and share. So let's have an episode where we just talk about how amazing it is to keep seahorses, right? Because it is. It's
It
amazing.
is, but I think
There's
you got to remember too. Another thing is, it's like Chris Carey always says, you have to remember they're fish. They are
yeah,
fish. So when you think about any fish you've kept over the years, whether it's freshwater fish or different kinds of saltwater fish, they all have issues and things that they
yes,
can have to deal with. I mean, it's they're part of the animal kingdom. They all have things come
yeah.
up
Dogs
now and
have
then,
problems.
right? So that's why
Correct.
we talk about those things. It wouldn't be any different if I was talking about my goldfish, or it's just the
Right.
seahorses are more
I just
interesting
try to.
to us. So we talk about all those
So
things, but really almost every pet I've had has had something come up, you know.
right. So two comments on that. Number one, I know seahorses are fish, but I just don't. They're not the same to me. It's the
Right.
most interesting time I've
That's
ever
what I'm
had.
saying. They are
They
more
don't.
interesting
They're,
to us, but
they're
when it comes down to
amazing.
it, they
But
are a fish.
agreed. Agreed. I agree with you. I just wanted to make that comment. And now you made me forget my second comment. Damn it, Holly. Dang it. I don't mean to apologize for always being negative, and it's not even negative. We're just trying to
Mhm.
work people through their problems or talk about problems we've had in case someone needs that information later down the line. But I really would like to have some newcomer Wine Wednesdays where we're talking about all the fun things to set up, and, or have somebody on that's really successful like next
Mhm.
week where they're just talking about how amazing it is and how great they're doing, because I just feel like we're often negative, but I know why, and I just like to explain why. I guess that's it. But okay, I'm done rambling. Let's say cheers. You made a good point, Ray. I'll quit apologizing. You guys have a great week. We'll see you next week. Watch for posts. Everybody say happy one.